welcome. On behalf of the National Transit Institute, I thank you for participating in the Transit Asset Management Principles for Small Systems webinar. The National Transit Institute develops, promotes, and delivers training and education programs for the public transit industry in the United States. For our first presentation, we are pleased to have presenters from SouthWest Transit with us today.
Thank you, Judy. I'm Dave Jacobson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with SouthWest Transit. We're located in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but this kind of helps you give you a little. We serve the three cities of Eden Prairie, Chanhassen, and Chaska, Minnesota. I'm also joined here with Steve LaFrance from SouthWest Transit, and he'll be covering the process as to where we've gone through to get to where we are today. And we also have Brooke Ellis from LSA Design, who has helped us greatly and getting us to the next step about putting the reports together and taking our data and doing something with it. So that being said, I'll tell you a little bit about SouthWest Transit. We're an express bus provider. We do about 1.2 million rides annually. We do have a high level of customer service and system reliability, resulting in recognized numerous times by the state of Minnesota and APTA for excellence. We just recently received the APTA Safety Award as the best in the country, and got a merit award for security purposes. And we also just received our customer satisfaction survey that gives us like a 99% satisfaction, so very pleased with that. And why are we developing an asset management plan? Well, back in 1997, we basically didn't have much in the line of assets. Today we've got 60 million plus. It's our relatively young organization, and we're now facing a need to replace or rehabilitate various fleets and facilities. Additionally, we have unstable funding. We need to identify how we can maintain and replace assets without bankrupting the organization. In other words, we have to develop a plan and a set of strategies to maintain those assets, and we're trying to deal the best we can with the stability of our funding. We also need to put together a true business approach, an engineering approach. We currently do our capital improvement plan for a 1 to 2 year process, but we need to go out further than that. We need to, again, develop a plan that will help us down the road 5, 6, 7 years, perhaps beyond. Additional funding is obviously a need to improve our ability to make a strong case for additional new funding. This type of data and information could be used in potential grant applications, as well as just kind of an interesting, self-view of how we're doing. And finally, our policy and political changes have resulted in reduced leverage. We can't leverage our current as we once did. We need to have a plan in place to address the what-ifs. Everybody knows in the transit industry there's always a lot of what-ifs. Give you just a brief overview of our assets and how some of them look like. We currently have 61 revenue buses. We've got 7 non-revenue vehicles. We've got facility maintenance equipment. We've got 4 structured parking garage and stations, which are quite significant. In the lower right, you can see a picture of one. We also have some surface parking ride lots with shelters. And we also have 2 maintenance facilities. The one in the lower picture in the lower left is our main garage facility. Now let's talk about process through kind of where we are today. You kind of do the basic kinds of things. You got to collect your asset data and create your subsystem components. You got to find your data. You got to put it together. And once you have your data, you got to put it into a database. So you got to develop it for maximum capital asset transparency. You also have to assign condition ratings, and that's part of the MTI process, a 0 to 5 ranking system, which at the time seems kind of complex, but when it comes out the other end, it's very, very useful. We also have to determine some of our residual life using both manufacturer-suggested useful life and recent experiences. And the basic formula we use is outlined there. And finally, we determine a life cycle and replacement costs using current market rate plus inflation. And we also utilize outside experts to get different pricing. Now at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Steve LaFrance.
This is Steve LaFrance. After we gathered and input our asset information, we had a budget cycle coming up, and we decided to put our asset database to test and see how we could forecast our upcoming budget cycle. We found that our database functionality wasn't quite what we had anticipated that it would be, and at that point we found that we we needed a little extra help. And that's when we brought LSA on board. And Brooke will be with you in a little bit, and she'll explain some of the things that she's helped us with. But basically, she helped us refine our data and our reports so that we could get them into a usable form. We determined that we needed to set up a pilot project, so we focused on one building, that was our Eden Prairie garage. SouthWest Transit's goal was to anticipate our long-term capital costs, improve our budget reporting capabilities, and to budget more effectively, understand the operations and maintenance costs for the asset systems wide, and improve our capital replacement decision-making process during the budgeting. Our Eden Prairie Garage pilot project, we utilized the SouthWest Transit collected assets that we had already collected and put into our access database. We identified additional data for completing our reports and set up queries and reports that easily sort and view our desired data. We intend to add in our full operations and maintenance data to help us get full cost understanding and to integrate our facilities and rolling stock into one budgeting report. In our processes, we found that our subcomponent and ID system was too broad. So LSA brought to us a classification system using the NIST Uniformat classification list. This is a common system in the architectural and builder world, and it's similar to in the bus repair world, ATA systems codes. Basically the same thing. It helps categorize our systems into one grouping and classifying our facilities and understanding better what those classifications are. With the Uniformat system, it encompasses all our assets. It gives us 3 levels of categorization. And that groups it by function. And you can kind of see on the slide where we have the major levels of substructure, shell, interiors, and then if you go over to your right, it breaks down into the little bit smaller categories so that when we're looking at a report, it gives us a little better idea of what exactly we're looking at. We also wanted to assure that the input form was intuitive so that it was easy enough to implement for all levels of our staff. So when we need to go through and update our information or when we have new information to input, it's easily done. And that's another thing that we refined from our original asset database. And you can see on our screen there on your left, when we want to add a new asset, you identify which building, the asset number, and then we get into that format coding, and there again you can see that it's broken down into several different areas that allows us to understand exactly what we're looking at. And the same with an edit screen, able to go in and edit when we find that we have some other information that needs to be updated. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brooke Ellis, who has an architectural background and also some strong computer skills that she was able to bring to us and really help us with getting these reports in order.
Hello, I am Brooke Ellis from LSA Design, Inc. I would like to walk you through the process a little bit about how we went about setting up queries into going into these reports that really will come in handy for the budget cycles that SouthWest Transit is looking for. So this first slide here is basically a capital projecting breakdown. Now you can see on the left side of that image, you can see where the Uniformat code comes into play. We chose to go down to the 3rd level of that categorization. That way we can really see where our major costs are coming from for each facility. The advantage of having your data in a database is that the idea is to put the data in once and then be able to query that data in an infinite amount of ways so that you can view only what you need to view for that particular report. That was really LSA's big challenge, is to figure out what SouthWest is really looking for and then how we are going to go about getting that information. This particular report, this budgeting breakdown, uses a 3% escalator for capital projecting costs into the future. This comes in handy during budgeting periods when we're talking about capital replacement, and also for weighting costs and spreading them out across a multitude of years. You can see that in 2016 for the Eden Prairie bus garage, there's no asset capital replacement that has to occur. So potentially, SouthWest will look at taking these 2014 costs and spreading them out. Here is the summary for all of their facilities, a very, very simple, at the end of the day, what are we looking at numbers. This also has a 3% escalator in that, and that was decided we're going to use that as an input for this when we use for capital projecting, and this is the National Transit Institute recommendation as part of a class that Southwest Transit attended regarding transit asset management. The beauty of Access, which is the program that we're using, Microsoft Access, is that that 3% number can be changed with one simple click into whatever we decide that number is more accurate down the line. We want to change it. All of the reports and the reporting associated will be updated. So that will bring a lot of ease to Southwest in the future. Something also that Southwest Transit requested was to have a backlog of assets by worst condition. Again, with these reports, you can sort by or filter by building, asset type, replacement year, or years deferred if you want to see your topmost deferred assets, and obviously those will be priority assets for the coming year. This will help a lot with capital replacement decision making from year to year. And then again, just another example of a report, but if someone from Southwest needs to see, now we've made all of our decisions for the year, we've modified the replacement year for A, B, and C assets, let's see the final list. Here's the final number that they can use for budgeting. Again, you can also sort and filter. They have the capabilities to single out a particular facility if they only want to see, let's say, Eden Prairie Bus Garage. They can do that. We're completed to date as far as the database goes. So we've assessed all of the assets, identified missing data, implemented the uniformat, organized the data. My biggest challenge was setting up queries. If you're less familiar with databases and queries, essentially it's setting up the formula to get the reports that you need and organizing that information as well. We assessed desired reports that Southwest was looking for and created those based on the flexible queries also created. And then we added that 3% figure that I talked about earlier. We also, as Steve was mentioning, really improved the userability of the database, just making it look, simple to read. The reports shouldn't look like a giant spreadsheet of information. It should be clearly understood and therefore able to be used by anyone down the road who starts coming to work for Southwest Transit should know how to use it. And then just as with any investment, we included a small training program. We walked through with Southwest how to use all the reports, how to adjust them if necessary, and training is really a key here. Next steps, integrating that operations and maintenance piece simultaneously. Steve LaFrance and Dave Jacobson and their facilities team are really trying to work on getting a computerized maintenance management software program that will work very similarly as their fleet management software, which they already are using, and that program is Dossier. So integrating those two programs into this now very built-up database and be able to manipulate those numbers into O&M budgeting and total system costs. That's really the end game here. So the potential next steps, I guess I'm a little bit ahead of myself, but there you can see the two software programs that will have the operations and maintenance data for Southwest, and then also combining that into the database. Again, continuing to develop the transit asset management plan. This has already been initiated, as Dave has mentioned earlier, but the three key things that were still unknown are defining what exactly is an asset, how far do we go when we keep track of and budget for these capital replacement assets. Again, strategy and thresholds as well as procedures surrounding transit asset management. And then also defining personnel roles and responsibilities. Who does what, who's responsible for what, and who goes to who when there's a situation or a question involving this. The next two slides are just some examples of what that operations and maintenance reporting capability might look like. This is the information that we're anticipating needing. I won't go too far into this as it's still under development, but you can see material, labor, and equipment costs are just as important as finding how long a certain procedure will take for each asset. during facilities maintenance and repair, and then integrating that into the database. So at the end of the day, we have a nice looking report, and we can, these are arbitrary numbers, so I wouldn't gloss anything here, but just so you can see, SouthWest can really use this to project out costs, total system costs, either by facility or total system. Then I'll hand this back over to Jay Jacobson to wrap it up.
Thanks, Brooke. So, the old question is, so what did you learn? And obviously through this whole process here, we've learned a few things. Starting with, obviously we need to keep this a priority. We have a small organization, and everybody gets busy doing what they do on a day-to-day basis. And this is something that we have to keep in front of everybody constantly. We also need to establish a project lead and keep individuals accountable by setting the solid timeline. This is kind of like the management 101. And it's funny when you get into these kinds of things how the thought of this sometimes gets overwhelming and you kind of slips a little bit. As I said, smaller agencies like ours have limited staff and resources, so a high level of coordination is needed. And consultants help bring an outside look at our process. It was very, very helpful because we have the issue of basically spinning our wheels. And with Brooke and LSA, they were able to come in and help us out very easily. We've already had the information. They package it up and are starting to produce reports, which are nice. We also have to identify how this information can be maintained and updated. That's a big deal as we move forward. Is it an annual thing? Which I believe it will be. And finally, we need to realize that the entire process takes a lot of time. We started back in December of 2012 on the previous NTI webinar. We didn't have much to show, and we've been working on it for quite some time. But we were gathering data, and we needed a little extra. Now we've come to a point here where we're able to provide output. We've got reports. We can prioritize. We can bring things to our CEO, and if he decides that certain things are a little more important than what the report is giving us, it also gives us flexibility. So with that, I will close.